Forecast.
Hey guys, this is a weekly forecast for April 5th through the 9th of 2021. Alright, we'll start off with the Nzdusd USD pair. This is a weekly chart. We'll start off with an overview. Alright, so since this long move right here, starting from this range, was solely based on momentum, in the long term, we are short biased, right back down to this pivot low. However, in the short term, since there is still a little bit of momentum long in this move, we are long biased, right back up to this pivot high. Okay, let's talk entries. Okay, we'll stay on this weekly chart. Now, fundamentally, what we're looking at is this trend line from this pivot to this pivot right here. And we want compact price action to form on this trend line. Now, this compact price action could be on the daily, 4-hour, or perhaps even the 1-hour chart. However, it must be on this weekly trend line level. Now, if we could get that compact price action, then perhaps we could target our short-term target right up here at this pivot high. Okay, so let's see what's happening on the 4-hour chart at this level right here. Okay, this is a 4-hour chart. Now, the last long trade that formed last week was right here. And then weaker short trades formed right here. So although there is a little bit more strength long on this currency pair for the time being, if we're going to target this pivot high way up here, I'm much more comfortable to see a stronger long trade form first. So at this point, we're either looking for that compact price action on that weekly trend line level, or perhaps another pullback down so we could get a stronger long trade to form. Then perhaps we could target that pivot high target way up here. Okay, so we'll just have to see how price plays out on this one, and I'll keep you updated on the midweek analysis. Alright, let's go on to the Euro Yen. Oh, and please subscribe if you like these videos, and please press the like button. It will really help me out, guys. Thank you. Okay, this is a weekly chart. We'll start off with an overview. Alright, since the last short trade that formed right here was stronger than this last long trade, we were biased short. However, price hit these monthly gap levels as a target already, so this would be a situation where we would actually be targeting the opposing direction and have a bias long, right up to this pivot high as a target. Okay, so in the medium term, we are biased long, right up to this pivot high right here. Okay, let's talk entries. Okay, this is a 4-hour chart. Now that target we were talking about on the weekly chart is right here. And at this point, although we are long biased right up to that target, there's not enough room between current price action and the target. Thus, the risk reward is quite bad. So at this point, what we ideally want is for price to pull back as much as it can, creating distance between our target and our entry point to increase our profit potential and decrease our risk. So at this point, what we ideally want is for price to start respecting one of these 4-hour trend lines and start making its way back down. Now that's before it hits our target level up here. So we'll have to see if one of these 4-hour trend lines begins to create pressure down so we could get that pullback down. So eventually we could take it right back up to that pivot high as a target. Okay, so we'll just see how price plays out on this one also. Alright, we'll go on to the Euro USD. Okay, this is a monthly chart. We'll start off with an overview. Now in the long term, because of this price action being very strong short and this fall still having a little bit more ways down, in the long term, we are short biased, right back down to this pivot low. However, in the short term, due to this trend line breakout from this pivot to this pivot right here, and how price broke this out roughly 8 months ago, we are long biased in the short term, right back up to this pivot high as a target. Alright, let's talk entries. Okay, this is a weekly chart. Let me just run you by the setup we're currently looking at. Alright, so there was a strong short trade right here, then a week long trade. So as price pulled back, we were looking for short entries, right back down to this pivot low as a target. And then the same thing happened again, a week long trade formed. So as price pulled back, we were looking for short entries, right back down to this new pivot low. And that target was hit. Now at this point, we're waiting to see if another weekly long trade forms. Then we're going to gauge its strength and see if this long trade is stronger than this short trade. Now, if the long trade is stronger, then that's in line with our short-term bias. We'll be targeting this pivot high as a target. On the other hand, if this hypothetical long is weak, well then we'll be having the same setup again. We'll let price pull back and take it short right back down to that new pivot low as a target. And if you're having a hard time understanding what I'm talking about in terms of strong short trades and weak long trades, please watch my price action trading course, lessons 1 through 4, and that should give you a general idea. Okay, so at this point, we're just going to have to see if on the weekly chart, we get a long trade to form, and then we'll just have to gauge it from there to see when we could take a long right up to our short-term target up here. All right, let's go on to the Aussie-NZD pair. Okay, this is a monthly chart. We'll start off with an overview. Okay, so we had a normal double bottom right here against a weak downward trend line from this pivot to this pivot right here. And so we were long biased in the long term, right up to this trend line right here, or perhaps this pivot high as a second target. Now that first target was hit 2 weeks ago right here, and now at this point, we want to see if price could get through this trend line level to our second target. So in the short term, we are neutral biased. All right, let's talk entries. Okay, this is the 4-hour chart. Now we were talking about a couple weeks ago about how we want price to grunge through that monthly trend line level with compact price action. And it was doing that up to last week. However, and it failed and started coming right back down. Thus, the first attempt to that monthly second target has failed. Okay, so at this point, there's a couple of things we want to be looking at. So let me take you over to the daily chart. Okay, so whether price will get to that second target on this attempt is dependent on 2 details. So one is if this trend line right here from this pivot to this pivot, if this trend line gets respected, it has compact price action again on the daily, 4-hour, 1-hour charts, then possibly we could get through that monthly trend line to that second target. However, on the other hand, another thing we want to be looking at is that if price gets right back down to this pivot right here, then perhaps price will start collapsing right back down to this pivot also. And if price does reach this pivot right here, then it is possible that that second long-term target on the monthly chart will not get hit on this attempt. So fundamentally this week, what we want to be looking for is for price to start respecting this daily trend line level right here as a first step. All right, so let's go on to the USD-JPY pair. All right, this is a monthly chart. We'll start off with an overview. All right, so ultimately we're targeting this 101 pivot low as a target. But before that, we're talking about the pullback to 109. So at this point, in the long term, we are still short bias right down to this pivot low as a target. However, in the short term, due to the strong momentum up right here, we have to see if it slows down so we could get that short entry. Thus, in the short term, we are neutral bias. All right, so let's go on to entries. Okay, we'll stay on this monthly chart. Now at this point, that trend line we were talking about that we wanted to get respected was broken out right here. Now in order to get that short entry right back down to this 101 level, there's a price range that we want price to respect. That will be this trend line from this pivot to this pivot. It's slightly diagonal. And moreover, it's these respected highs at these levels right here. Those respected highs being right here. So for the time being, we do not want price to close above this range. And moreover, let me take you to the weekly chart. All right, so on the weekly chart, we fundamentally want to see some slowing momentum through simply 2 red candles to form on the weekly chart. And the reason we need 2 red candles on the weekly chart is because this move long was originally based on the weekly chart to begin with. So since this move long is based on a weekly chart, we also want to see slowing momentum on the weekly chart also. All right, now there's one more thing I do want to add. Let's go back to the monthly chart. Okay, so this range we were talking about from this pivot to this pivot and these general highs right here, if we see price begin to close above this range, then price will then have the possibility of reaching these trend line levels up here. So let me show you how this trend line is drawn. Okay, let me zoom out here. Okay, so that trend line level is from this pivot right here to this pivot. Again, if this range right here gets broken out and price begins to close above this range, well then possibly price could reach this trend line up here. Okay, but for the time being, what we want to be looking for is for price to stay within this range right here, and moreover on the weekly chart to have 2 red candles to form. So either way, this setup is going to take some time to show its direction. Okay, so that's it for this week's weekly forecast. I hope you guys have a great week. And thanks for watching, guys. Okay, bye.